Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, it seems that we're all glued to 24-hour news channels at the moment, and wherever you're listening to me, we're all following that same narrative. But as you know, I love to focus on human stories and how we can all leverage technology and create a more positive narrative in the future. And today, I want to learn more about an inspirational story behind a company called Stringr, which was started by two friends, one a former news producer and the other a product manager and consultant who started his first company in high school. But today's guest is Lindsay Stewart, and she spent over 10 years in TV news, producing segments for ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, and so many others. But it was spending time in those newsrooms where the idea of Stringr came to her. And it is a cracking story and full of value, so buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to New York so we can speak with Lindsay now. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Lindsay. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name's Lindsay Stewart, and I'm the CEO and one of the founders of a company called Stringr. Stringr is a video marketplace that basically allows our customers to come in, think media customers, and make custom video requests. And then we have a very large population of very talented videographers on the other side of the platform who come and give us video, and by extension, really give an access to our customers to coverage that they wouldn't otherwise get.
And for people that are tuning in and just hearing about Stringr for the very first time, can you just tell me a little bit more about where you're based and what it is, the kind of problems you solve, and your company's mission, really?
Yeah, sure. So a good number of us, the company is based here in the U.S. in New York City. And then we also have a team that's growing in London as well, because we have a 24/7 team. And the basic premise of Stringr, and just to back up a little bit, I'm a former TV news producer, was to give media more access to video. And so our goal is to really give that window to the world, to our media customers, and now increasingly advertising customers and brands, the ability to gather imagery quickly, efficiently, and really draw from the creativity of a larger base of videographers. I always say at Stringr, on the other side of all of this is a very important other kind of customer, which is our videographers. We care very much about them as well, and giving them opportunity to kind of access opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise get if they were just kind of a single operator. So it's kind of the marriage of those two communities, the people who want more video and the people who want to really create more video.
And I'm curious then, so as a former network news producer, how did your experience in such a dynamic and fast-paced job help you identify an opportunity for Stringr, and what was missing in the news business that Stringr provides now?
I think a lot of good ideas come from just like a basic need. And, I was a news producer that would walk into the building and, like so many others, get assignments. And then, those assignments didn't often have all the video that I wanted it. And getting the video I wanted, it required a lot of travel. It was sometimes time prohibitive. It was sometimes cost prohibitive. It was sometimes geography prohibitive. And to tell that really great story, I was often searching on the internet for just things that already exist, like in YouTube or, other social media. And so that's where the idea was generated. I also happened to be at the same time as, doing some work for World News Tonight and Good Morning America. I also happened to be going to business school. So I was surrounded by people who knew just other things. They knew how to build a technological product. They knew about finance. They knew all about all these other cool things. And we were able to put together Stringr. So, it was this basic need of wanting more video and connecting, videographers videographers who, talented people that weren't just in big cities, but were in small, towns as well, with people like myself. And so you fast forward to today, about 5.5 years later, and it's really great. We have about 100,000 videographers on our platform, and we have a lot of name brand media companies coming in and asking for video. So it's pretty cool to see an idea that I just kind of sparked in my mind based on a basic need come to fruition.
And it's a great story behind it as well. I love how you've taken it from that idea to where you are now. But for everyone listening, what is Stringr? Who's it for, and how does it work?
Stringr is a media marketplace where our customers can come in, media customers, brands, and agencies can come in and ask for video they want. So it can be breaking news type video. It can be interviews with Fortune 500 CEOs. And all they basically have to do is enter in their specifications. And then that request goes out immediately to the population of videographers who are in our network. So we have a great, different tiers of types of assignments now. But the basic premise is that somebody can put in a request for video, and then a large population of people can see that request. They can decide to accept that assignment. They can upload video using our mobile app, or they can shoot video with a higher end camera and use our web-based platform to upload it. And then that video is immediately available to our customers, whether it be live or taped. And then our customers can decide to take it, and then immediately our videographers get an email from us saying that their video has sold, and then the next business day they get their money. So it's just a streamlined platform for all things video production, and really the kind of unique piece of it is this network of videographers that are easily accessible in virtually any location in the US, the UK, and increasingly in Europe.
I think it's also worth highlighting that you recently announced an expanded partnership with Google News Initiative. So can you tell me a little bit more about that partnership, and ultimately, what does it mean for Stringr?
Yeah, it's a really great opportunity, and we've really enjoyed working with the folks over at the Google News Initiative, who's, one of their main missions is to give tools to media organizations, large and small, so that they can explore alternate ways to gather content, alternate ways to kind of formulate a new business model. Because as we've all read, media, especially newspapers and their online divisions, have had a hard time with monetization. And so what we have done with Google, initially our first project with them is covering American politics. So in the fall and into the early winter, we covered every single Democratic candidate, and also President Trump as well when he would get on the road. And what we were able to do is leverage this large population of videographers who would go to every single event. We were able to gather that video, bring it in-house, and then use our internal team of producers to also provide basically packaged content. Those are those little stories that you see and watch, whether it's on broadcast or on digital, or publishing our website. And what we were providing is daily coverage of politics. As a former political producer, it was pretty cool to use the Stringr backbone to not have to make any hard choices, to cover everything that we wanted to cover, and then have it just be distributed to media organizations of Google's choosing, large and small. So, we were seeing small newspapers get access to more video than I ever had as, a producer at Fox News. And that was a very cool opportunity. Now, moving forward, of course, we have a different and distinct opportunity to really cover COVID. And, it's a really tough time for a lot of media organizations as they are really pulling back on sending their own crews out into the field. And while we are very, very careful about where, our crews or our videographers are going, what we are also able to do is leverage our technology to capture video from experts all over the world. They are basically acting as their own videographers. We give them, a style guide and a playbook to use our app, to use our website, and we are able to talk to the best and the brightest with basically a flip of a switch by using our app. So, with the Google News Initiative, they've really given us this amazing opportunity to flex our muscles, not only with politics, but in this very unique time where, people are truly kind of locked down and not able to go outside of their regions, their homes. We're still able very much to gather very meaningful imagery quite easily.
And there are two sides to your platform, really, one for independent videographers and the other for media outlets. So who are the ideal media customers for Stringr? And do you have maybe a few use cases for Stringr in action just to help everyone listening just understand how it all works and fits together?
Yeah, so we work with stations. So think your local station. We work with two stations here in New York who come in and ask for video of, say a protest in Times Square. But then they also leverage us to go get an interview in New Jersey with an expert at Rutgers. I think our ideal customer in the broadcast sphere is the folks who really use us on a daily basis, who have integrated us into their workflow. That's because news customers, and I know them quite well. I used to be one, really believe that if they are using you every day, that you are integral to you're part of their team in a way. And what we're doing there is really extending their assignment desk, extending their photography base, because, even in New York, they have, huge staffs of their own photographers who are really covering very important stories. And what we're able to do is allow them to come out of their editorial meetings and not have to make, once again, those hard editorial choices that you often do when you only have so many videographers. They can come into our system, they can ask for the video that they want, and they can really be unique. They don't have to say, well, we're sending Joe, our photographer, here, so we can't send him over there. They can say, we're sending Joe here to cover this A block, super important story where we really want to dig into the subject of the story and create great journalism. And then on the other hand, we can come to Stringr and say, we also need this expert. We also want this cool, voice of VO or, little piece of video of a community event. We don't have to make those hard choices anymore. We can have it all. I always say more is more when it comes to video. When it comes to our publishing partners, I think some of our best partners are taking our pre-produced content. They largely focus on, print content, writing, getting out into the field and really talking to people in that kind of typical journalistic sense. And so we've been able to complement them by providing video that they can take, that's valuable, that's more evergreen, that can sit on their websites a little bit longer, but also drive that revenue and those subscriptions that they need that often video kind of drags along. Most, I think, readers and viewers these days expect to see some sort of video, and we can enable that for them. So, we have lots of different kinds of customers. We even have corporate style customers that we adore. And those are the folks that just want to basically show what their companies are doing, tell their stories, and don't necessarily want to travel crews to get that done, or just want, again, more choices, more voices from their own company. So we have lots of different styles of different good customers, but those are a few examples.
And given the economic downside of COVID-19 at the moment, there are lead times for many in the media business. But with this daily podcast, I am trying to create a more positive narrative and hear about the stories that are making a difference and the companies that are making a difference. So how do you see Stringr serving as an economic boost for broadcasters of all sizes, as well as those independent videographers who depend on those regular gigs? Is there anything around that you can share today?
Of course. So a couple of things. Number one, we've always been a very efficient model for gathering video. And if you consider media companies that are, struggling to know whether, where their advertisers are headed, their prime source of revenue, they're looking at a model for how they can, maintain most of their staff during a difficult time and also still gather meaningful news. What we've done is, of course, we have a videographer base that's all over the country. We also have a technology that you can leverage such that you don't have to send any humans to capture footage. You can use your own staff to get video from their kind of own region. And so I think because we've created a platform that's so flexible, that has, of course, people in these localized areas, these videographers who really kind of are almost stepping out into their own backyards, their own little microcosm to gather video. And so nobody really has to travel very far. Or, we have companies who are leveraging our technology such that their own teams can use our technology to get a live feed or get a little bit of video, again, in their own region without having to kind of extend too far or travel too far. I think that's where we're providing our most value to our customers. And to that end, we're lucky in that we're one of those companies, especially in the news vertical, where, we are needed more now than ever. And then in terms of our videographers, if you look at a number of other, employers who, again, are kind of questioning where their next revenue is coming from, our revenue is steady in the news vertical. So we're not having to pull back on kind of payments or things like that. The other piece of it is we're able to access people once again in their own backyards. They might walk a block as they're going to the grocery store, which is still allowed. Although what I would say is gathering for news purposes is still very much legal here in the U.S. and we in the legalities across the world are slightly different, but for the most part, people are still allowed to be on the street if they're gathering something that's meaningful for news media, which of course we're a part of. And so we've heard stories from videographers who've done live shots for major cable networks, how grateful they are to be still receiving payments from us, because everybody's still trying to pay their rent, and we're helping do that. We're a job that isn't drying up. We of course are very careful about the safety of our videographers and the sanctity and the mental well-being of them. So we aren't sending them anywhere where we don't believe is either legal or safe. But on the other hand, there are still very many opportunities that they don't have to go very far, and they still get to make some money with us. So, I guess we're very grateful for that during a time that is otherwise very, 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 very difficult for everyone.
And although it seems like a lifetime away at the moment, if we do dare to look to the other side of COVID-19,
sure.
Over there in the US, you're going to have to turn your collective attention to the presidential election. So I'm curious, how do you see Stringr both facilitating and impacting the coverage of that election?
Well, we, for our part, because of our partnership with Google, have not turned our attention away from politics. I very much have a producer and in charge and a unit that every single day is keeping their finger on what is going on. So we haven't turned our attention away, and we are raring to go once people want to shift their attention to the presidential election. And I think what we have been able to do is, there's a lot of talk about democratization of content and this and that. But we don't have to make hard choices on who to cover and who to ask questions of. We get to send, once the world, gets back to normal, again, normal will look a little different, no doubt. But we'll be able to kind of redeploy more videographers into the field to capture interviews, to get the true voice of America. And I think for network producers, we always really did try to capture the voice of what America was saying and what people were thinking. But it always came down to big events and bigger cities where we had more resources. Stringr has videographer resources everywhere. So we are really able to ask questions of not only people in New York, but in Omaha. And I think that's really important as you consider what the narrative of the next election will be, because I think a lot of people in the last presidential cycle in the big cities were fairly surprised as to how the election was, how it turned out. And I think that we at Stringr were not surprised. We weren't surprised for a number of reasons. And I think what also will be good is it will connect people. It will connect people who might be Trump supporters and also with people who are Biden supporters or once Obama supporters, to realize that some of the issues they care about are very much similar. I think that one of the sad parts about making too many stark choices in the narrative that media folks do is that we create these false barriers in our storytelling. And that's because of the access we have to content. But once you start realizing that how people think is much more nuanced, and that the difference between a Biden supporter and a Trump supporter might not be as stark as you think, I think that gets people to really think about how they vote and who they are. And I hope that we can contribute to that nuance, that gray area, such that issues become more important than parties.
Fantastic. And I'm curious as well, what is your grand vision for Stringr over the next few years? I appreciate you probably can't share too much of the direction, but is there anything you can share about how you see the road ahead?
No doubt. I'm happy to share almost anything. But what I would say is this. We want people who want to tell their story to think of Stringr first when they think of video. And that is a very broad statement. We started in news, and that's largely because that's what I knew. I was a news producer producer and I was solving for a problem. But everybody is telling their story with video these days, whether you're a corporation, whether you're a small to medium-sized business, whether you're selling a product on Amazon, you are trying to tell a story with video. And because people, consumers, viewers, readers, they're all expecting some sort of visual imagery around what you're doing. And so what our grand vision for Stringr is from a customer perspective is to really be that place where you can come in and ask for video so that you can tell your story. And that's not just in the news capacity, that's in the corporate capacity and even the small to medium sized business capacity as well. And then on the videographer side of things, we really want to provide opportunity. We've seen our ability really flourish. We started with news and kind of assignments that may be more quicker and fast paced. We are now, we have a very robust rating system for our videographers, and we want to connect our best videographers with higher paying assignments, really make some of those folks' dreams come true as well. What we have seen along the way and what we have heard from videographers is there's a lot of people who don't live in big cities who wanted to be a part of the larger media sphere and have so much talent. There's so much talent in this world. And what we want to do is connect talented people to our customers who want to tell their story.
So you were a news producer, had a fantastic idea to solve a problem and then turn that idea into a hugely successful business. But for people listening all over the world that could be at various stages of their own startup journey, is there any advice that you would offer to those people?
Oh gosh. Yeah, so much really. But what I would say is, being an entrepreneur is not for everyone, I think the first decision you make is, do you like the comfort of your day job? And how much do you like security? And if you go, security isn't the biggest deal to me, but really getting to use parts of my brain that aren't that well exercised intrigues me. That is the first decision you make as an entrepreneur. And, it's okay not to want to be an entrepreneur. I always, one of my analogies is a lot of people always say they love to be independent and they could live alone. I know personally, I don't like living alone. I like having a partner in life. And so that's kind of one, know yourself, know kind of your risk tolerance. The other piece of it is once you've decided that you have this idea, there are two things that you can really do to push it along. Every day, wake up and do it. Push the ball forward. It's a very simple piece of advice, but a lot of people get caught up in, am I doing enough? Am I making enough traction each day? And you're really not going to know for a while. I'd say for probably a year, whether or not your idea is like the biggest idea on the planet, whether it's a medium and a good idea, or whether maybe you should go back to the drawing board. But every day you should push that ball forward and make some progress. I would say always have a co-founder, have somebody that really compliments you in a way that and understands you and pushes you, and you both motivate each other, but don't be experts in the same thing. Because at the end of the day, you are going to have to split up the roles and get separate things done. And then get early feedback often. And realize that some of the feedback that you get, put yourself in a community that gives you harsh feedback, and that not all of that feedback will be accurate, but you will hear the same wrong feedback a lot. And do you know what that message is? That message is you are communicating inaccurately. And so, oftentimes in the early days, I get really frustrated. I'd be like, that person is just wrong. That person is wrong. And they were wrong. But I was wrong in my form of communication, and I needed to learn how to better tell the story of Stringr. And that's the other piece of it. I came from a storytelling background, and I learned that telling the story of a new and disruptive concept is really difficult, and you can't take it personally when people don't understand. You just always go back to the drawing board. Iteration is one of the most key things about starting something new. And then finally, it's, if you are raising money, which is very difficult for any idea, realize that you are driving towards a yes or a no, and that most people are going to say no, and that is okay. You are trying to find the people from a financial backing standpoint that believe in your concept, and to not get hurt by the 95% who don't understand, don't care, and don't want to invest. That is okay, because if you have a great idea and you talk to enough people, will find enough financial backing to push the ball forward.
Fantastic advice. And I've loved chatting with you today. And we've covered so much ground. So for anyone listening, could you just point them in the direction of your website, social channels? And if they have any additional questions about anything we've talked about today, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, so if you want to learn a little bit more about the company, you can go to www.stringr.com. If you want to connect with me, the best way is to find me on LinkedIn. I'm Lindsay with an A, Stewart, Stewart at Stringr. Feel free to drop me a note or connect with me. I'm always excited to talk to folks with ideas there. Those are the two easiest ways to find us at Stringr, and I'll always route you to the right people on my team if it's a different kind of question.
Well, it really does feel like a crazy moment in time at the moment, so much uncertainty. But of course, in a few months, you've got the election coming up. So what I'd love to do is get you back on later this year, and we'll talk about a whole different world of crazy, hopefully. But more than anything, just a big thank you for joining me today, Lindsay.
Thank you so much. I welcome that opportunity. I love nothing more than a big election.
I love that conversation. I especially love how Lindsay took that idea that came to her working in a busy newsroom. And from that moment, here we are in 2020, and Stringr is a hugely successful business and thriving in a period of uncertainty by helping independent videographers and media outlets. Inspiring stuff, and I do hope to get her back on the podcast come election time, where I think it'll be a completely different narrative out there. Well, at least I think we all hope so. But I'd love to see the other side of Stringr and how it works in action there. So we will get her back on the podcast. But I would love to hear more about what you thought of today's conversation. And remember, you can email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website's techblogwriter.co.uk, where you'll find over 1,200 podcast interviews on there for your listening pleasure. And keep those questions coming in on any of those, or indeed anything. But that's it for today's episode. So a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.